Investigating Children's Irony Comprehension, the podcast.
Welcome everyone to today's episode. We are diving into something really fun and, dare I say, a little cheeky. Irony. Yes, irony, again and for the last time, but with a little twist. For this episode, I'll be your host, Debs, and we have 4 guest speakers from 4 different parts of the world to explore irony across cultures. We have Adi from Mexico.
Hi.
Annika from the US.
Hey.
Ejlar from Turkey.
Hi.
And Hannah from Germany. So let's kick things off with a fun thought experiment. Ready, everyone?
Yeah.
Yes.
So picture this. It's been a hot few days and you have been enjoying some nice long coffee breaks with your colleagues. You're starting to fall a bit behind schedule. I'm your boss and I say to you all, great news, you all work so hard, I'm giving you a 1-day vacation. Use it wisely and have fun. How would you take that? What would you think? Let's start with Adi representing Mexico.
Well, I think I might feel a little unsure if this is a joke or something serious. I would probably give an awkward laugh because work culture is highly respected. So this could come off as a bit too direct. I'd probably try to show gratitude, as I'm not sure if it's meant to be funny or if I should take it as a reflection of my work.
I think Annika from the US would like to say something.
Oh, I totally get the irony. I'd probably respond with something like, wow, what a luxury. 1 whole day of freedom. Lucky us. Irony is a big thing here.
Oh, you're not seeing this, but our Turkish delight, Ejlal, is raising her eyebrows.
Honestly, I would probably feel a bit confused. Like, is this for real or is it some kind of backhanded comment? You know, in Turkey, we take work pretty seriously. So if someone said this, I would start wondering if they are trying to hint at something. It might feel a bit indirect, like they're making a subtle critic or something.
That's an interesting perspective. Hannah, what are your thoughts?
I'd be confused, but I also recognize the irony in the statement. It's just that in Germany we take work seriously. This feels a bit inappropriate or odd. I'd interpret it literally at first and maybe see the humor afterwards, but it would be a little too much irony for my taste.
That's a great point. It really shows how our interpretation can vary so much depending on our cultural lens. And this ties in perfectly with what research tells us. Culture can differ significantly in how they use and understand irony. For instance, there is a theory developed in 1959 by a leading American anthropologist, Edward Hall, that shows that low-context culture, like in the US and Germany, often use explicit, direct irony, making the humor easier to spot. Meanwhile, high-context culture, like Mexico and Turkey, rely more on shared context, making the irony subtler and sometimes harder to recognize. All right, let's now dive into some bigger ideas. The way we use or even recognize irony depends on whether we come from an individualistic or collectivist society. This concept was developed by researcher Green Osteda in the 1980s. So to start things off, let's quickly define these terms.
Sure. Individualistic cultures value personal freedom and independence. Countries like the US and Germany often focus on the individual. So humor tends to be more direct and even sarcastic. It's all about personal expression and showing intelligence through things like irony.
Exactly. Also, cultures can be classified by communication styles, either as a high or low context society. Depending on the quality of a message, individualistic cultures like the US tend to be low context society communicators, in which meaning is often spelt out. Think of shows like SNL or The Daily Show, where humor is laced with ironic social commentary.
And on the flip side, in high-context culture like Mexico and Turkey, communication tends to be more subtle and indirect. And so humor might lean more on double meanings or clever wordplay. Adi, Ejlal, how do you feel about this?
Yeah, I can agree to that. In Mexico, humor can be very playful, but it's a little more indirect. It's really all about our context. Our use of irony is more situational, and humor is often about keeping things lighthearted.
Exactly. In Turkey, humor is more subtle, especially irony. We love joking with close friends, but in formal settings, we are more careful. If you're not careful, irony can seem like criticism or disrespect. So it's all about reading the room.
Oh, that's such an interesting point, Hijla. And it really aligns with what Banasik and Kałowski highlighted in 2022 research. They found that in high context culture like yours, for example, irony tends to be much more subtle because maintaining respect and harmony in relationship is a top priority. So if we were to summarize, individualistic society like the US and Germany tends to use irony more directly and explicitly, while in collectivist culture like Mexico and Turkey, irony is subtler, more indirect, and deeply tied to context. Fascinating, isn't it? What's even more interesting is that a recent study by Ervas and Schnell conducted in 2024 found that both individualistic and collectivist groups viewed ironic criticism as less insulting than literal criticism. Only the individualistic groups found it significantly more entertaining. This highlights how cultural values influence the social function of irony, whether it's used to critique, entertain, or even elevate someone's status. With that in mind, let's now explore the evolution of irony in children's development. So here's the thought. When do we start using irony? We all have been around kids, and we all know they often don't get irony at first. But how does it develop, and what influences it? Irony requires not only a theory of mind, basically understanding other people's thought and intention, but also an awareness of social context. Maybe we can hear some of these differences from our guest speakers.
In Mexico, irony is used, but not in front of our parents. It's more something you'd share with your friends or siblings, especially if there's a play on words or an inside joke. Irony isn't usually encouraged, as respect is very big in our culture.
That's really interesting. That actually reminds me of a study by Dr. Young and his team, where they found that in collectivist culture, irony is mostly used among friends or in private settings, and it's not seen as appropriate in formal or respectful situation. So that really matches what you were saying about growing up in Mexico, where irony wasn't as common with elders.
Well, here in the States, it's a bit different. Kids at a young age are exposed to all sorts of media inlaid with irony. TV shows, social media, the news. It's everywhere, at home and school, with other kids and even adults. Irony use is often encouraged and seen as a mark of intelligence.
In Turkey, you would probably use irony with close friends, but definitely not with elders. Respect is a big deal, so irony isn't something you see often between generations. Although younger kids are picking it up more because of social media and global influences.
Wow, those are some fascinating perspectives. It's clear that when and with whom irony is used can vary greatly across cultures and even between generations. In fact, the same study by Ervas and Schnell we mentioned before compared how people from collectivistic and individualistic culture perceived ironic criticism. They found that collectivist culture not only rated ironic criticism as less funny and entertaining compared to individualistic culture, but also saw it as having less of a status-enhancing effect. Isn't that fascinating? But let's now zoom in on how we used irony when we were kids. Did we all understand it right away, or did it take time?
Irony was pretty much second nature growing up. My friends and family would always joke with irony, so I just adapted to it. It's something that's encouraged. It's seen as a sign of wit and humor. And it's making irony seem more universal as well.
Irony was always used as a fun way to joke around, but at home, not so much. You would never want to risk being misunderstood or seen as disrespectful. I think it's interesting that younger generations are blending our traditional ways with the global humor trend.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I only used it with friends, never in front of my parents or elders. Though now I witness my younger family members using irony in everyday settings. This new generation is really changing it up. I think Western media is having a major influence.
For me, when I was young, and even more now, I see irony as a means to communicate, to joke, and to connect.
I see how that would make a big difference. Thanks all for sharing that. Now, as we wrap up today's conversation, it's clear that irony plays a big role in different cultures, and in some, it's just a part of everyday life. But now that we have entered a digital age, are these gaps blending or widening?
I believe cultures are connected more than they ever have before.
I think Generation Alpha seems to be blending these different forms of humor.
In a way, it's shaping how irony is understood across the globe.
Yeah.
Yay! Finally, you're all agreeing. But unfortunately, we're out of time for this episode. But don't worry, this is definitely a topic we should revisit in a future podcast. But for now, I want to thank all our listeners for tuning in, and a huge shout out to our incredible guests, Adi, Annika, Hannah, and Ejlal. Thank you, everyone. Stay sharp, stay ironic, and always remember, context is everything.
Investigating Children's Irony Comprehension, the podcast.